when you have a reasoning model, and now every GPT-5 flavor is a reasoning model, you can just fine tune the how much effort it gives. That reasoning is kind of like if you know before when we got GPT-4, one of the tricks to make it better was, hey, think step by step. So now this is kind of like a product feature. It's kind of implicit to the model. AI will just do it on every task and will try to think, and you can actually fine tune how much you should think about certain problem. So that thinking reduces hallucinations as well, and is able to kind of like see its gaps in reasoning. Because if you think before, the model would just fast forward to a solution instead of ever backtracking.
Hello, welcome to Generation AI, the podcast where we demystify artificial intelligence in the world of higher education. Today, we have a very special episode. I'm artist Kadu. I'm your host, and with me, I have JC Bonilla, co-host, and also Petter as well. Hey, Petter.
Hello.
Hey, JC.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Petter.
Hello, JC.
We're three, but we're missing two because this episode is about a five. Artists, bring it home. What is this episode all about?
We're going to talk all about GPT-5. If you have used ChatGPT over the last couple of years, you know that this is a big improvement. And if you haven't been following over the last week, we're recording this episode on Monday, August 11th, and last Thursday, OpenAI announced and launched GPT-5, which is their frontier model. And the most anticipated, probably one of the most anticipated models out there, GPT-5. It had been a really long time since they launched a model, like an advanced model.
Multiple delays.
Right, and then this one had a lot of delays as well. So here we are today, kind of discussing, what does this mean? What does it mean for folks who are using ChatGPT every single day? What does it mean for product developers like Element 451 and how we're incorporating it already? And then what does it mean for the models themselves, right? What is it like? What type of model is this? Like, what kind of capabilities does it bring, and how is it built? And like, what is the what are the smarts coming from, and how should we think about working with these newer types of models like GPT-5? Sounds good.
Let's jump in.
Heather, do you want to take a stab at it?
So GPT-5 is the new iteration. It kind of like assembles all the findings they had since you all know, like 2 years ago when GPT-4 came, and over the time we got kind of like different variations of models, all differently named, a little bit confusing. 4.0, 03, 01, 01 Pro. So there was different things they learned through that path. One of the things was that by scaling the inference time, and by meaning inference time, giving models more time to think, that the performance can improve drastically. And some other things in kind of like how do they approach kind of preparing the data and doing the fine tuning of these models, how that can improve performance as well. But also like playing around with multimodal kind of like inputs and outputs of the model, how that can also change the behavior and improve the performance that we saw in the O series, or 4.0 series specifically. So GPT-5 is kind of like that new kind of like release that encompasses all those findings in the last 2 years, and it's a huge jump if you look compared to the knowledge of GPT-4 and its capabilities now to GPT-5. It's a huge jump in terms of 2 years in terms of capabilities. So that's kind of like what compiles it for normal users, kind of like for people that use ChatGPT. What this means specifically, you might now in ChatGPT actually not see any other model, so you will just see GPT-5 is available. There's some tricks in there, and we can dive deeper to what kind of from the product perspective, what OpenAI wants to do and why that matters. But also we can talk a little bit what it means under the hood.
And that's the exciting thing for me, right, Peter and Aris, that the evolution of models, this one feels different. That it's not all about breaking the standards and the benchmark and it did all that. It's still there, but it's a unified system where it decides, right, how to answer and how to juggle between reasoning and models. And for me, that's a really, really smart decision. Personally, I did not love having to think, I'm going to do this type of execution. I'm going to go 4.0, 3.0, whatever I need there. It's basically juggling models on its own.
Yeah, and if you think about it, it's actually a product decision, right? Because most people around the world don't even know that there is a reasoning type of model, or know what that means, and that there's like a special flavor that you should use for specific problems. and it's not their fault, right? It's not their fault, right? The people who packaged it up and need to explain it. So Sam Altman has even saying like a year ago, even like his vision is for you not to think about it. So kind of like he told us what's coming even a year ago. So and we see that today. So one thing that they did specifically is they put like a small model in front of it. You don't see that, but it actually under the hood picks the right model to use. So GPT-5 on its own, it's not like it's like multiple models in between. So they're separate models that then get routed based on your current task that you're trying to do. And OpenAI tries to infer that by looking at all the previous signals of how people use ChatGPT. So they're not using that like, hey, it's only a smart model. They actually train the model based on the signals where people were clicking, or what type of queries, what type of models they were selecting, and kind of like were they in the end satisfied with the results, like thumbs up and thumbs downing. So there was a training process they used, and they now call this a router. And you might see that a lot of people are complaining on X that GPT-5 release maybe fumbled and it didn't go through. Well, because the router was not working properly. So the router in the first day of the release was erroring and kind of like always sending people to the kind of like the worst model instead of the smartest.
Let's take a step back to kind of signify. So OpenAI released not only one model, but they released basically four different models. They released GPT-5, they released GPT-5 Pro, they released GPT-5 Mini, and GPT-5 Nano. So they released four different models, and each one of those models has an ability to think longer and to solve more complex problems. So the decision that, or like, how do you put all those models into ChatGPT and unify the experience is kind of what we're talking about here, because a lot of the you probably, as you go down there, the number of models that you get from the dropdown was increasing basically every single week that you go in there. There's just something new. So from a product perspective, it makes a lot of sense. And what Petter is talking about is this notion of different types of tasks require different capabilities or different thinking, how much thinking you need for something that's very simple, like, okay, give me an answer right away. It gives you an answer right away, uses the less capable version of GPT-5 for something that needs a lot more thinking, or, uses something a little bit bigger. Now, one of the reasons that, this is what we call this router, it's really clever and smart in terms of how it's implemented. However, what Petter, they kind of botched the launch of this, which is really interesting. And a lot of people were getting the mini or the nano model to basically respond to it. One other part that it's to keep in mind is that you don't tell it what model to use. You can't tell it. The only thing that you can do is provide some signals, or it looks at the problem or the query that you give it, and then it decides based on that, how long to think through it. That's a really interesting UX that's been put on top of it without somebody actually picking on it. And some folks have even said, if you tell it to think hard about this, you can make it pick the higher level one. Have you guys played around with that?
Yep, yeah.
Yeah.
Artist, can you first maybe for the audience just explain like what's the difference between the models? Why do they call this a nano mini?
Essentially, what happens is these models are really large, and the larger they are, the more parameters, the larger parameters they have, the more knowledge essentially they contain, because they've been trained on a lot of data, and in order to keep all of that in your memory, you need to have a lot of memory. So lots of parameters in there to think about this world content. So in some cases, you don't need this memory. You don't need to know, for example, historical dates or historical information, or news about whatever it was, all the training data sets. So you don't need a lot of that. You probably need the capabilities of the model in a specific area, meaning reasoning or math or coding, or like you could basically are pruning this knowledge, and that's how you derive this smaller models. So these models are smaller because for the purposes of the use cases, you need speed, and the smaller they are, the faster you can get tokens out of them, and the cheaper they are to run. So you don't need this really big model because you don't need all that information. So you go smaller and smaller, but the capabilities are still there. The reasoning and all the smarts of the intelligence are still there. It's just that the world knowledge is not there. So if you ask it questions, you'll probably not be really good, and might hallucinate quite a bit if you ask it crazy questions.
So, smart model and routing, one of the features. What can we say about expanded multimodal capabilities, right? So, one of the things that happened in the past, as you selected things, right, then there was the one for text and you wanted to do images. So, is it embedded? What do we know about the multimodal capabilities of this?
I haven't played yet with it. Have you artists maybe took some time?
I haven't played with the multimodal parts yet.
The way I experienced it, right? So first, I really like the new UI. It's color coded. It's a bit more 2025. I like that. What I know, because this is something that I do with my kids, I usually read a story that gets made up and I have these characters. So you can see when it generates 5 graphics that summarize the story, it's much faster and I don't have to select and toggle. So it was actually doing the selection based on, now I know I need to do a visual. And I know that because unless for the writing, I go to 4.0, and then for vision, it actually, I needed to swap. So it is doing that as well. But I've only done text, images. Just wondering how well it would do all these things. But I'm assuming it has that versatility and the routing applies to multi modal, right?
Currently, just vision is for images and text. That's available at least for us as
Okay.
developers. The video not yet available,
Sure.
and voice I think is still retained on the 4.0 series because for 4.0 is
That was
specifically
going to
like
be
the
my
Omni
next
type
question.
of.
What happens with voice? Okay. So routing, very interesting.
The one thing that's really important about this GPT-5 is that the hallucinations are a lot lower than prior models. So compared to prior models, now you get a lot fewer hallucinations. 45% compared to GPT-4o was about 80% or so, which is crazy, right? So the model is more honest. It recognizes impossible tasks and clearly kind of sets and communicates those limits, and again, it kind of cuts those deception rates in half.
What can we tell about safer output like that? Because in my experience, right, and some of the commentary that we've done through this podcast, you want safer output. You need to expand your rack, so the better knowledge base. Better in artists, you did the whole thing on context engineering that also gives you better, safer output. So what's happening with GPT-5 that gives you lower hallucination rates? What do you think is happening?
So from what me and artists kind of like as we were researching a little bit and seeing kind of like where OpenAI team focused on the reinforcement to learning kind of like approach that they took now from what we see is just they just got better data now. So across all tasks, they focus like on my better data and kind of like focusing the AI to be more agentic in its nature. So instead of trying to answer with so there's kind of layers, right? So one is better data. So if you give better data, the model will inherently be smarter because it's kind of like understanding of the world and how it approaches problems will be trained from the data. Second is when you have a reasoning model, and now every GPT-5 flavor is a reasoning model. You can just fine tune the how much effort it gives. That reasoning is kind of like if you know before when we got GPT-4, one of the tricks to make it better was hey think step by step. So now this is kind of like a product feature. It's kind of implicit to the model. AI will just do it on every task and will try to think, and you can actually fine tune how much you should think about certain problem. So that thinking reduces hallucinations as well, and is able to kind of like see its gaps in reasoning. Because if you think before, the model would just fast forward to a solution instead of ever backtracking. So you need to give a model that ability to backtrack. That's what reasoning gives it the ability to be. Oh, I see. I made an error. Like in my writing, I need to go back and kind of like they really focused on training it for tool calling. What does tool calling mean? So that's for people whenever you use GPT and you see that it search the internet to find something, or if you connected your Dropbox or Google Drive, it will go to search a document to find some information. So every time it decides to use another tool, that's basically the tool calling capabilities. We actually use that a lot in Element 51 because we need to connect it to our system to be able to do certain operations. So tool calling is really important. So they focused during their training to improve the accuracy on tool calling and to improve kind of the context gathering for the agents when they do tool calling. What that means is that the data they get will be from the systems, will not be their own inherent internal one, and that reduces the hallucination rate, as we kind of like proven with all the retrieval augmented generation or the RAG that you heard, that kind of helps reduce the hallucination rate. Well, this is the approach. They kind of just really focus that the model should behave by nature agentically and try to gather context. However, that behavior might not be something that people like. So you might see now on Twitter or X, you will see a lot of people complaining that they miss the older models, like 4.0, and even Sam Altman came yesterday. He said we have kind of like we are wrong. Like we didn't think that these people will all complain, like, because the major problem with 4.0 was something called sycophancy, where we're trying to kind of goes in and tries to whatever you want, it will try to kind of like go and then kind of support you, even though if you're not wrong. And it's really, really hard to teach models to not kind of go against you. So as they were trying to fix all that and then kind of like go to this again agentic, what this also means, before 4 will give you an answer even though it wasn't correct, but it will do fast. People like fast. So if it aligns with your worldview and it kind of like and you got the answer fast, you're okay. You don't complain. But now the model will actually go spend more time, which kind of like that latency kind of like hurts you, and you kind of like as a user perceive the experience is worse. And sometimes you will get now answers that really don't align with your worldview, but that's actually what it should be. Like AI should be there to help you, like a mentor, right? Not just do whatever you actually want to do. So that's now what's happening. It's really, really, really hard position for OpenAI, but I think longer term this pays off. Like longer term, this approach will pay off.
Peter, really quick, what's your thought of traditionally when you launch a frontier model, it gets benchmarked, and a lot of the benchmarking is against the competitors, right? So they didn't take that route. But to your point about
They
tools and
did.
productivity, no, I
They
don't think
did
they
actually.
benchmarked.
Yeah.
They
They
did. They
benchmarked with
did.
like Grok 4 and whatnot. I thought it was
Yeah,
Hmm.
they
yeah.
benchmarked between themselves.
The release notes include only their models because they don't want to
Okay,
promote other companies, of course.
gotcha.
But
Yeah,
they did on a kind of public accessible open source benchmark. So all the other
gotcha,
models have
gotcha,
their
gotcha.
scores. So there's
Okay,
a nice website called Artificial Analysis AI. They do a great job. They actually have like all the models in one place, and you can compare them in terms of all these benchmarks, how they compete. Also, like in terms of price and speed. And what OpenAI did with GPT-5, they actually have the new Pareto best model in the world. So all three flavors of the model, they got like the best Pareto curve in terms of
interesting.
what it means. Like the biggest model is the smartest than any other biggest model, and the smartest model is the smarter than any other smallest model. So it's
Okay,
Yeah.
uh, it's amazing. Again, on X, you will see a lot of people complaining. As we started to play, me and Artie specifically now, just 2 days ago, we are seeing the behaviors a little bit different. Same with like now we want to incorporate in Element and kind of find places where to use it properly. You see that the older prompting that you did doesn't work anymore. You kind of need to rethink it a little bit, and this model follows instructions differently. How you instruct it, it thinks more. You should use that capability. A lot of the techniques we used before might not be valid anymore. So every like developer now that might be developing with these, and potentially even like users that are not developers but might build their own custom GPTs, you'll probably need to rethink your system prompts and kind of like what instructions you gave it, because it's different. It's a different model. It's entirely different model than previously.
Yeah. Can we go a little bit more into that? What is the capability? Like, what does it allow, and how do you need to change the prompting that makes it a little bit different than before?
You should not give really long instructions anymore. That has been actually proven even before for people who knew to use reasoning models like O3. Kind of like even a simpler type of task, like simpler descriptions of the task, and you let the model decide what route to take can help. Of course, if you have a really really determined path and how they call it, how to search the problem space, then yes, you can explain it. But what's been proven, really long detailed instructions sometimes can hurt you with reasoning models. One thing that's important is now the models have that kind of like context gathering step, which is their reasoning. And from the internal documentation of OpenAI for developers, there is actually you should tell it how you should gather the context. So that's something that we were doing implicitly before, but now it's kind of like more a bigger recommendation. Um, One more thing that surprised me, for example, that's totally different in behavior. Markdown is totally disabled. You should tell it to output Markdown. It will sometimes obey you, but they said that after like a couple of turns of conversation that it already forgets, so you need to like inject that instruction over again, which is really interesting. Since before we were kind of like always using Markdown by default and kind of like thinking, and the format was always Markdown, right? Whenever you would probably work with with it to output any type of structured
Yeah.
layout.
When I hear all these things, and this is for me, and I think all the audience. So why go through the pain? The technology that you've done in Element is fantastic. So what do we gain in doing all the work that you need to do to go into GPT-5? What is the added value now?
One of the benefits when you're building kind of like an AI first company is that you benefit from models becoming smarter. When we started this journey 2 years ago, 3 years ago almost, right? I think ours 2.5
Time
years.
flies by. Right,
Uh,
exactly.
so
Building with the
so
Chat GPTs, yes.
yeah. So the models were really expensive. Were really expensive, really slow, and not that smart. And as we started integrating them more, we benefited from a new release of the model becoming smarter. You just needed to learn how to use it properly because it's a tool, right? Every tool you need to learn how to use. And every basically now what happens is you have all these other companies that are building all these models. If your system is pluggable to any of them, with every new model that comes up that's smarter, your system becomes smarter. If your system is AI first and AI runs in a lot of places, that means that even if it's 5% benchmark increase, might give you 5% increase across the borderline across your whole product. That compounds a lot. And if you think about it, these things happen really fast. So 2 years ago we had GPT-4, now we have GPT-5, and the curve is exponential in terms of improvement, in terms of capabilities, in terms of speed, in terms of cost. We now have kind of like our playbook, and our playbook is new models come in, we immediately play with them, we want to learn them, we want to figure out how they work, even if they might not be applicable. We had sometimes models that come in and we were like, hey, we might not want to use them because they just didn't fit the purpose. They were maybe too slow and we didn't have kind of like where to put them. But now Element as has a lot of AI integrations and then uses AI in a lot of places that you always have a place where to put it. And you have background jobs where latency is not that important, and you have like student facing like chatbots that need to be really fast. So depending on the model that you got, you can pick and choose the type of problem where you want to apply it. And if you've heard us, like what we said, right? We said that there's 4 models, but that they're for ChatGPT. But for developers, there's actually 3 models. There's the Mini, Nano, and just normal GPT-5. And then in terms of kind of like what OpenAI gives an advice what to use, Nano is for summarization or classification type of tasks. And if you think about it, like summarization is a really classic problem. Like every conversation that you have, on a chat, right, you might want to have a summarization. Every phone call, you might want AI to summarize it. So it's kind of like a really often thing that you would use. Nano, really cheap, really fast model. I think it's now one of the cheapest, smartest models that are available, even cheaper than Gemini. Um, Mini is kind of like for a chatbot use case, and the GPT-5 is for more agentic purposes. And when we say that, it can run longer, so you use it for really hard problems. We in Element will use it for application reading process, for application fraud detection, transcript evaluation. So kind of like these background things where you don't really need to see the output immediately. You can wait a little bit, but you want the really good results. And you're okay to give it 10 minutes even to think and to do work.
I was wondering if we could visit that angle of ChatGPT for developers that you just mentioning. The commentary on X, it's overwhelming how this is fantastic, right? And how ChatGPT now competes with the Windsurf, the
For coding. Mhm.
Claude, and all this type of things. So, how do you feel? How do you both feel about this? Is it real? Is this number one? How OpenAI is going to compete and try to move and sway towards the developer area, that there's other big competitors, and number two, is it that good, that has new benchmarks, and in terms of coding it's really interesting.
There's three things that OpenAI trained the model to be really good at. So as you train these bigger and bigger models and more, Peter mentioned that it's all about the quality of the data, and the engine underneath, or the reasoning capabilities, are getting really good. So that's how you can see that they're able to solve these crazy problems. However, where they get even better is where you give more what they call reinforcement learning. That's how these reasoning models are getting better, and they're moving faster. Incentives, right? Exactly. So the RL process and how much RL data and the quality of the data you provide in there is going to make these models even better post training, as part of that process. OpenAI decided to focus on three different areas on the RL to make them even better. One of them is coding. So coding was clearly an indication that they wanted to compete with mostly Anthropic, because their Opus models are really, really good. It just happens that we talked about Opus 4.1 dropping, which was the best coding model. Well, GPT-5 is technically competing with them right now for 1/12 of the cost, right? So the cost is a big, big driver of that. So they moved into the coding, and one of the things that they talk about in coding is they focus on the being more of a developer companion type of model, where it understands it's got better ergonomics around coding, and very, very smart, and one shot can do one shot, basically create really complex things with just one shot coding. So it's really smart around it. So coding was one. Writing was the second one. So this is really interesting because I experienced this firsthand as I was preparing for podcast episodes and titles and things like that. And I have prompts that I use in Claude, and Claude is so far has been the best at this mega prompts that I provide, like break down the titles, break down descriptions, break down the different sections, and so on and so forth. I did try to use it in GPT-5 with thinking, and I picked the higher thinking, and the writing was really good. Like the titles and the description, it was really good. It just came out shorter, more concise, more direct. So I found it. Of course, I haven't played a lot with it, but in just a few examples, comparing them back and forth. The third one that they said that they improved it drastically. They used a lot of medical type data, and kind of basically medical explanations, and they would like for people to use in healthcare and medicine. Basically, that's an area where a lot of people were using ChatGPT before, upload documents of their test results or whatever, and kind of go through that and analyze it and so on and so forth. So that's the third area. So health and learning aspects of it. So this health insights context. So those three areas are areas where they've improved it. And what we're seeing is that, who knows, next they can put more reinforcement learning, and they can improve on a lot of different vectors or in a lot of different areas. One thing that Peter and I were talking about it the other day is guided learning, right? So study mode, and they implemented study mode as a system prompt right now with some interesting output. But you can see they did say that, hey, we're going to embed this as part of the model as well. So now they move into education, and now they can move into other areas as they add more of this reinforcement learning or this vectors, and they focus on it. So I think the capabilities or the engine is really, really good. And the add-ons or the reinforcement learning on specific areas is going to be something that we're going to see more and more capabilities be added as we go forward. And you're not going to need to pick which one, because the model or that router is going to determine what model to drive it to based on the type of question that you're asking. So it's going to understand it. Is it a medical question? Is this a study question? Is this a coding problem? And then it's going to determine which one to pick based on that. So I think it's a great, from a product perspective, it's a great move. Yes, there's been some jagged, release things right now, but
Yeah,
what do you think?
but to be fair, like Sam Altman said, like even a week before release, he said, "Hey, please bear with us. We will be rolling this out." But they knew that it will be the traffic will just spike. That it will be really hard to serve that. You have just a limited number of GPUs. I mean, they have a lot of GPUs, but still, the the usage is crazy. And we actually saw that. Like one of the problems they had, and why things were failing as well, was they just couldn't serve. Like they said, the traffic actually doubled when they released it. So imagine your traffic doubling, and they already have really, really, really big traffic. So that might be one of the reasons also why they deprecated all the other all the other models. So they're not yet removed, but they deprecated and they will be removed in the future. They haven't specified the timeline. But listen to this. So they're deprecated 4.0, 4.1, 4.5, 4.1 mini, oh 04 mini, oh 04 mini high, oh 03, oh 04 pro. So what does that tell you? Right? They are really happy with the architecture. I think they're like, okay, each one of these models was an experiment. I think how they work, what I saw from like some like people talking on YouTube from OpenAI, like there's multiple teams. These teams don't work actually orchestrated. Like everybody tries to experiment on its own, and depending on the result of the experiment, they might actually push that live. That's why we saw all these models. It's probably different teams experimenting, and now they gathered all those findings across all those teams and like, okay, let's build it into one model. Let's delete all this other stuff so all our team can then focus on this is our new starting point. We have clean data. We have data prepped for this model. Let what else can we add? So it's interesting, really interesting.
And by the way, the question still holds. I love to hear both of you guys' perspectives on coding. Love to hear that we get a lot of writing, context and healthcare. Just to qualify the traffic, so roughly speaking, just the quick math. So 700 million users monthly, last reported by them. That means 8% of the world's population is already in the ChatGPT family, right? Because
Yeah.
this is data from prior to 5. So it will be very interesting to see that spike and how they handle 700 million users. And that was in a user could be dozens of queries and prompts a day. But
Yeah, and for JC for coding, what's interesting, it's still early, right? It's still early, just a couple of days. From what we're seeing on X, generally, it's mixed. Some people are happy, some people are really not happy, even with coding capabilities. I think it will take some time. Anthropic has the hearts of people like Claude, like that's beloved, and Anthropic has one of the best coding companions. Like Claude Code is one of the best tools right now in terms
Hmm.
of performance and kind of like most liked. Alternative to that is Cursor, but I think Claude Code has kind of like taken the top. I think Anthropic's most of its revenue actually comes from the coding business. So interesting that OpenAI is focusing that and trying to. And one of the things you saw actually on their during the announcement is that the team from Cursor, which is a coding platform, but you can use any model. Most people use Claude. So they actually had like a partnership during the announcement, and like Cursor was using GPT-5 before it was released, and they came in, and so it's interesting to see all that. I think they're definitely going to try to take that market over. For right now, it's still too early to know what's better. So we need to all to play a bit more with it. But on the benchmarks, they have the best scores, right? But benchmarks are not everything. Like you can game the benchmarks, right? If you have only examples, like if you're fine tuning for the benchmarks, then you will be best at the benchmarks, but not at like real world type of problems. So that's the interesting. Right now, the benchmarks are generally getting to saturate, so we need to start creating new types of benchmarks to be able to, hey, how do we now measure? Because now you see models are improving by 2 to 3%, like from release to release, and then the next iterations. I mean, so then it's really hard to then measure. What's the uh,
from my reading, and I just don't work with Claude as a developer, but apparently you guys love Claude's UI and UX. All the developer-centric tools built in and whatnot. So apparently that's what a lot of the devotion for Claude remains. What about you, artists? How do you think this is helping, or how are you liking the coding aspect?
Haven't played around with the coding aspect just yet. The feedback that I'm seeing, well, from the experts right now is that they basically build the coding aspect is more of a companion rather than agentic, kind of long context coding. So essentially, it's built so you can be kind of pair programming together with a person. And that's why you're seeing Cursor and some of these tools incorporating it. So it's not going to go back and say, okay, I'm going to build this whole thing for you and think through it and build the whole agent without it having interaction. It wants the collaboration with a human. So if that's how you work, that's probably a really, really good process. And for us here at Element, we never do the whole agentic thing. Like it's always in collaboration with a human. So I can totally see how this can be much more useful for larger organizations that are incorporating Cursor or some of the other AI assistants into their workflow. So this model is much better at that rather than the like the agentic workflows where it goes and builds the whole thing, the whole project. Because ultimately, at the enterprise level, nobody's doing whole projects on one shot anyway. It's mostly like, okay, write this part of it. Now let's write this part. Let's think through this part this way. So I feel they are really good at that. And what I've seen, it's something that is going to be super important for Cursor to obviously they're using it by default. They're using GPT-5 right now by default. But Peter, I don't know what do you think about that. I know that you've been very reluctant on using Claude Code because it of the whole thing that you need to be in it and it will touch everything versus like
Yeah,
being a little bit more constrained and only touching the things that it needs.
yeah. I think that's kind of a personal choice, right?
Oh,
That
you're
guys,
saying you're a control
it's
freak. Peter,
yeah.
the
I
control freak,
mean,
doesn't like it.
yeah, so it's kind of like a combination, right? Depending type of the task and also like personal choice. So sometimes you really enjoy doing some part of work, and you, and especially when you're like in the flow and you want to be in the flow, you really don't want to go give get a task to AI and sip coffee. I know that sounds crazy. That isn't that a dream job? Just give it to the AI, you go sip coffee, wait for it to finish the review. But sometimes you really love what you do and you want to spend it. You want to handcraft some things. So there's moments in time where you want to be in there, and like there's things that you just don't want to remember. Like there's so now at this age, like we are connecting to so many systems. Who will remember how they all work, right? So having AI to research the documentation, give you how to connect to them, handle the boilerplate, handle the plumbing, and then you do the strategy and the organizing. So it all depends again on kind of the type of the job that you're doing. Right now, for example, we're doing like a specific database migration, like moving certain providers, and for a specific subsystem, and like I already know what to do. It's now just like to think about it. Just you just need to go and write everything, but we know what to do. Like it's simple. There's no gotchas. So why would I go write it manually? Then I would use like an agent, be like, hey, go in the background, do it, and just ping me when you're done for me to review the code. And then I go in and review the code because it's plumbing. It's nothing like it's there's nothing inherently that I would learn specifically if I go and do this task myself. So it will depend. It will depend on like what you want to do.
One thing that's also really important to call out, the I had a chance to kind of play around with there's two versions. If you have the GPT Pro account, the $200 one, so he has the GPT-5, which has the routing. He has GPT-5 thinking, which you can actually use the higher thinking, and then GPT-5 Pro, research grades intelligence. I had a chance to kind of play a couple to put a couple of things through it. I don't think I have hit the limit on what it can do just because the tasks that I gave it were not that sophisticated. But I feel like that's going to be an area where we're going to see, people using it more and more in medical research and in other areas as well. But let's get back to, in terms of like the capabilities of where it is, Grok 4 heavy, it's still better than GPT-5 in a lot of tasks. Well, if you think about like the way that it's building, it's putting together multiple agents and it's saying, okay, go ahead and answer this question or solve this problem, and then I'm going to pick the best one, right, out of all those different answers. So GPT-5 Pro does something very similar underneath, where it goes along multiple vector lines. So the comparisons are not quite there because I don't think it's available in the API just yet. So people are probably not comparing it to that level. But we're seeing that if you want more power and if you want more intelligence, you're going to go the route of having lots of different answers and then having the AI pick the best one, or a lot of different versions and having the AI pick the best one. So that's how you're going to get better and better going forward. I feel like, and of course, that's going to cost more and more money or more tokens. So hopefully, the cost of these things goes down tremendously. But right now, GPT-5 is probably the cheapest for the intelligence that's out there.
Well, is it GPT-5? I think it's available to all for free. Is that right? I know thinking I have.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So it's
Yes.
available to everybody, right? So and
Hmm.
that's what how we started the conversation. It's now the default. So consumers. Maybe we should talk about more consumers. Like, what does it mean? And then I don't know if we want to talk about our higher ed sector, but thinking is paid, and of course, Pro is the premium one.
From OpenAI internal, like Sam Altman posted, the percentage of users. This is I think 20 hours ago. The percentage of users using reasoning models each day is significantly increasing. For example, for free users, we went from less than 1% to 7%. This is just a couple of days, guys. And for plus users, from 7% to 24%. So that's it, right? That shows you. And with it's not that kind of like, hey, why everybody's forcing reasoning? It's been proven that reasoning improves performance. So that means
Mhm.
that you will get better results. So all these people are now getting better results no matter what they do. They're more productive, and they're able to make better decisions. So
Exactly.
that's a really really important change. This is for consumers, so not just
Mhm.
for companies.
Yep, less hallucinations, better results, more complex tasks that they can do. So all these things are super, super important.
Just a caveat. So as they are still struggling with traffic, they did say that they will come to the public like in a couple of days and kind of like with an announcements of what they will do in terms of maybe they limit usage. Maybe I don't think they put really hard rate limits, so maybe rate limits get put on some of these for GPT-5, or maybe they will just immediately remove the older models, give people time to like move, but then remove them and then kind of like to kind of like free those GPUs for GPT-5 usage. So that would be interesting to see now in the following days.
Overall, the sentiment from my perspective is it's not groundbreaking. However, it's an extremely smart move for the largest AI platform out there to introduce and make this available to a lot more people than have access to right now. It's a smart move in the right direction for having the ability to pick the right model for the right job. And also the pricing on our API being so cheap, it kind of gives us now the possibility, and actually we're going to implement them really quickly to put reasoning models in our product. So huge, huge value for everyday users of ChatGPT. And as we know, most of the people use ChatGPT rather than some of the other AI assistants. And I don't see a reason for people moving away from ChatGPT at this point.
Yeah, yeah. Just like to summarize, right? Less hallucinations, less sycophantic, better pricing, top of the benchmarks again. OpenAI got that back after a month. So it's a win across everything. It's not a huge jump compared to the competitors in terms of intelligence, but it is a jump that they have taken the first place.
Yeah.
So let's see. Let's see.
My summary, and not around features, but maybe what it means to the consumer, right? If you think about other predecessors for O3 and whatnot, they were great assistants, right? But with ChatGPT, it's a chief of staff, right? In the sense that it knows when to act and how to think, and when to go hard, when to go soft, and I think that's a really exciting thing, and good and useful for us consumers. It's just this work of AI is all about orchestration. So it's exciting that now we have a frontier model that, in a way, orchestrates at work, my personal life, and I like that. So that's for me the takeaway. We got a model that is more of a chief of staff of the models.
All right. Well, I like that take. So let's Heather, any take from the products on the product side for you, or when
Uh,
when are we
so
seeing this? So we already rolled out a couple of places, right?
no pressure, no pressure. Yes, yes. On low stakes like summarization, classification types of problems with it, we are now looking into putting it into kind of like places where there's higher risk, where the model needs to behave properly, like giving answers and analyzing, kind of like reading applications. So we are evaluating right now. We will definitely go with GPT-5. We're just kind of like learning the ropes, basically trying to figure out what's the best parameters to use. For us developers, there's kind of like a new type of property that we can use. As you heard, like they can do like reasoning more or less. Well, it's actually four levels of reasoning, and you have three models. So now the kind of like the the number of models actually for us increased under the hood. So we are not playing just to find the kind of the best performance in terms of speed and accuracy.
Well, for what it's worth, I think the capabilities on the writing and the quality of the writing is going to be so much better as we kind of incorporate that in there.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
all right, folks. Well, hopefully you got some insight. If you don't use ChatGPT yet, gives you an excuse to go ahead and use it. If you thought that you weren't getting good enough quality, now you have even more of an excuse to go ahead and get the best quality out there. We certainly started to use these reasoning models a few months ago with the O3 and O1, and now this is available for everyone to start using ChatGPT. Highly recommend you go play around with it. Go build stuff, go ask it questions, really hard questions, strategy. If you're a marketer, this is again an amazing feed forward in terms of writing capabilities and copy and so on and so forth. And if you're a product developer, again, the cost of development on this is tremendous. So you're going to see more and more capable products being incorporated. Yes, this is going really fast. Yes, this is going to, get better and better. And yes, we're going to see other models coming up. But we just wanted to give you our first takes on GPT-5. There's a lot of takes out there. So hopefully you can come back with some questions. Thank you, guys. Thanks, JC. Thanks, Petter. Till next time. Generation AI is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you're going to like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing weekly, and we've got a wide range of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that's helping institutions all over the country create meaningful, personalized, and engaging connections with their prospects and students. Learn more at element451.com.